people God used to make them extraordinary. What do they all have in common? Well, they all realized one truth. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weaknesses. Therefore, I boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Today we're going to talk about Peter, the rock that Jesus built his church on. But before Peter gives that first sermon in the book of Acts, Jesus had a lot of work to do in Peter's heart, because Peter was arrogant. And we're going to watch this story unfold. And for me, it's one of my favorite stories in all of Scripture, because it just shows the power and the beauty of God's grace and his mercy, and that God can in fact use ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We're going to pick up this story in the book of Mark, chapter 16, and it's going to start with Mary Magdalene. He said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where he laid them. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that we are going before you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." He singles out Peter. He tells Mary to go tell the disciples and Peter. But why the emphasis on Peter? Well, in order to figure that out, we have to look at the story that's found in all the Gospels. We're going to read from the Gospel of John. Then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. And Peter was following at a distance. And when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard, he sat down together. Peter sat down among them. Then a servant girl serving him had sat in the light, and looking closely at him, he said, "This man was also with him." But he denied it, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." And a little later, someone else saw him and said, "You also are one of them." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." And after Peter, an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, "Certainly this man also was with him, for he told to the Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you were talking about." And immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter, and Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. Now, if you can imagine Peter locking eyes with Jesus, at the same time remembering what Jesus had spoken to him, that he would deny him 3 times, the betrayal that Peter must have felt that he just inflicted on Jesus, and the shame and the guilt that encompassed him in the midst of that. And we know that he was greatly impacted by that, because the next line says he went and he wept bitterly. But Jesus was not finished with Peter. Jesus is full of grace, and his promises are true. And he told Peter, "On this rock I will build my church." But he had some work to do in Peter's heart. And so when he tells Mary to go tell the disciples and Peter to go to Galilee, this is where Peter's redemption would unfold. And when they're out fishing, they see a man standing on the shore, and he says, cast your net out to the side." And then they bring in the fish. And then one of them said, "Look, Simon, that's Jesus." And again, Peter, so full of guilt and shame, tore off his garments and jumped into the sea. But Jesus was not finished with Peter. He wanted to restore Peter. And we're going to pick up the text here. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Tend to my sheep." And he said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said it to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Jesus asked Peter 3 times around this charcoal fire, "Do you love me?" Just as Peter denied Jesus 3 times around the charcoal fire when he was arrested. Jesus was wiping the slate clean, restoring Peter. But after every time Jesus asked Peter if he loved him, he gave him a command to feed my lambs, to tend my sheep, and to feed my sheep. But in order for Peter to obey these calls to ministry, Jesus had to remove the sinfulness from his heart. The constant comparing himself to others, the constant "I want to be the most important." Because Peter was going to be the person that Christ built his church on, and he wouldn't have been able to do that if Peter's heart was full of pride. He had to have a heart of humility. And when he finally got it, Jesus says to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk whenever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. This he said to show what kind of death he was going to glorify God. And after saying these things to him, he said, "Follow me." Jesus is telling Peter point blank that you're going to die for me. You are going to be crucified for me. And he looks at Peter and he says, "Follow me." And that's the same statement that Jesus asked every one of us to follow me. And all of us, we have weaknesses, but God can use them for his glory, and he can in fact continue to this day to have ordinary people do extraordinary things.